Lewis Hamilton left Mercedes to chase one final world championship with Ferrari. Now he is watching the team he abandoned destroy Formula One again. George Russell wins. Kimi Antonelli finishes second. Mercedes lock out the front row in Canada and humiliate the rest of the grid, while Ferrari collapses behind them with brake problems, engine deficits, and zero answers. And the most painful part for Hamilton? He may finally be realizing Mercedes never lost control of the sport. Because while Ferrari were fighting just to survive qualifying, Mercedes looked untouchable. Russell dominated. Antonelli backed him up. The W17 looked faster in every condition. And hidden inside the data was a brutal number Ferrari cannot escape. Up to 25 horsepower behind Mercedes. At one of the fastest circuits on the calendar. That is catastrophic. Meanwhile, Hamilton delivered what he called his best qualifying lap since joining Ferrari, and it still left him nearly 3/10 behind Russell. 3/10 after a perfect lap. That tells you everything. And while Mercedes celebrated another 1-2 performance, Charles Leclerc admitted he was entering corners, hoping not to go straight on because the Ferrari brakes felt completely unpredictable. That is not a title fight anymore. That is a crisis. But here's where the story becomes explosive. Because inside the paddock, people are starting to ask a question nobody expected only months ago. Did Lewis Hamilton leave Mercedes right before they became dominant again? The moment the Canadian weekend started, Lewis Hamilton probably believed Ferrari still had a chance to fight near the front. By Saturday night, that illusion was collapsing fast. Because while Mercedes looked calm, dominant, and completely in control of the new Formula One era, Ferrari looked like a team desperately trying to survive it. The contrast between both garages was brutal. George Russell controlled the sprint race. Then he returned hours later and took pole position again. Kimi Antonelli locked out the front row beside him. Mercedes finished the day looking like the fastest and most complete team on the grid. Meanwhile, Ferrari were already in damage limitation mode. Hamilton finished 5th in qualifying, Leclerc only 8th. And the deeper people looked into the numbers, the worse Ferrari's situation appeared. Because this was not only about driver performance. The SF26 simply looked outmatched technically. And Canada exposed that weakness everywhere. On the straights, the Ferrari engine deficit became impossible to hide. According to the technical analysis from the weekend, Ferrari may currently be losing between 22 and 25 horsepower compared to Mercedes. That is enormous in modern Formula One, especially at Gilles Villeneuve. This circuit is built around acceleration zones and heavy braking, long straights, hard traction exits, violent deceleration into chicanes. If your power unit is weaker, the track punishes you lap after lap. And the speed trap numbers were devastating. Ferrari reportedly arrived at the end of the pit straight up to 20 kilometers per hour, slower than the Mercedes before braking for turn 1. Think about how impossible that makes racing. Imagine trying to fight another car while it keeps disappearing every time the road straightens. That is exactly what Hamilton and Leclerc were experiencing. And here's what made the situation emotionally brutal for Hamilton specifically. For the first time since joining Ferrari, he actually sounded happy after qualifying. Genuinely happy. He called it his best qualifying lap since arriving at Maranello. He said the car responded exactly the way he wanted. That should have been a breakthrough moment. Instead, it became a terrifying realization. Because even Hamilton's best possible lap still left him almost 3/10 behind George Russell's Mercedes. That gap matters enormously. In Formula One, 3/10 at the front can feel like an entirely different category of car. And suddenly, Hamilton was forced to watch the team he left behind dominate the sport again, while he sat inside a Ferrari, still searching for basic answers. But the deepest warning sign for Ferrari was not Hamilton. It was Charles Leclerc. Because Leclerc no longer sounded frustrated. He sounded defeated. The Monégasque admitted publicly that he was struggling badly with the brakes and entering corners, hoping not to go straight on. That sentence revealed everything. Confidence is everything in Formula One. The moment a driver stops trusting the brakes, lap time disappears instantly. Drivers brake earlier, hesitate during turn-in, avoid attacking curbs aggressively. And Canada is one of the worst circuits possible to lose braking confidence. One mistake at the final chicane, and you hit the wall of champions. One hesitation into the hairpin destroys your entire straight-line momentum. Leclerc looked trapped between caution and desperation the entire weekend. And here's the painful part. At one stage during qualifying, Leclerc actually produced the fastest first sector of anybody on the grid, faster than Mercedes. faster than McLaren, faster than everyone. Then the lap collapsed again. Brake confidence disappeared. Dirty air interrupted the Ferrari balance. Another opportunity gone. That sequence perfectly summarized Ferrari's entire season. Potential for a few corners, then immediate collapse under pressure. And while Ferrari kept fighting instability, Mercedes looked terrifyingly complete. The W17 had pace over one lap, strong tire management, superior straight-line speed, better energy deployment under the new regulations, and perhaps most dangerous of all, internal confidence. Russell looked composed. Antonelli looked fast. Toto Wolff looked calm. That is what winning teams look like. Meanwhile, Ferrari arrived in Canada without a single upgrade package, while every major rival evolved around them. No new floor, no aerodynamic breakthrough, no emergency response to Mercedes. Nothing, because after earlier development failures, Ferrari reportedly became too cautious to risk introducing more parts without understanding why previous updates failed correlation targets. Technically, that sounds responsible. Competitively, it may already be destroying their season. And that is where Hamilton's situation becomes incredibly painful, because the seven-time world champion may now be realizing something nobody expected only months ago. Mercedes did not collapse after he left. They rebuilt faster than Ferrari did. For Lewis Hamilton, Canada may have been the first truly painful reminder that leaving Mercedes does not guarantee escaping them. Because while Ferrari continues searching for stability, Mercedes suddenly look like they already understand the entire new Formula One era better than everyone else. And that realization changes everything emotionally inside the paddock. Think about Hamilton's perspective for a moment. He spent years fighting through Mercedes' difficult final seasons. The car became unpredictable. Development stalled. Red Bull took control of the sport. Then the new regulations arrived, and Ferrari looked like the project with the brighter future. That was the dream. Fresh start, fresh challenge, one final championship push in red. But Canada exposed a brutal possibility. Mercedes may have solved the regulations faster than Ferrari ever did, and the evidence was everywhere. Russell looked completely in control of the W17, not surviving the car, controlling it. Antonelli looked fast enough to back him up instantly. The team executed cleanly, calmly, confidently. That is what dominance looks like before people fully admit it exists. Meanwhile, Ferrari looked overwhelmed by problems from every direction. Engine deficit, brake instability, no upgrades, poor electrical deployment, and perhaps most dangerously of all, growing psychological exhaustion. Because Formula One teams can survive bad weekends. What destroys elite teams is losing belief internally. And Canada felt dangerously close to that point for Ferrari, especially with Charles Leclerc. Leclerc's comments after qualifying sounded heavier than normal frustration. He openly admitted the braking confidence was so poor that he was approaching corners almost hoping the car would stop correctly. Drivers almost never speak that honestly unless the situation feels serious internally. And once confidence disappears from a Formula One driver, performance collapses quickly. Think about walking across ice. The moment you stop trusting your footing, every step becomes slower and more cautious automatically. That is exactly what happens inside a Formula One cockpit. And Leclerc now looks trapped in that mindset. Hamilton, meanwhile, appears to be adapting emotionally in the opposite direction. Canada was one of the first weekends where he genuinely sounded connected to the Ferrari. The heavy braking style of Gilles Villeneuve matched his natural driving instincts perfectly. For the first time, he looked like a driver beginning to understand how to extract the maximum from the SF26. But here's the painful contradiction. The more comfortable Hamilton becomes with the Ferrari, the more obvious the car's limitations seem to be. That is devastating for a driver, because uncertainty can create hope. Drivers tell themselves the problem is adaptation, setup, chemistry with engineers. Canada removed that illusion. Hamilton delivered what he believed was his best lap with Ferrari, and it still was not remotely enough. That changes a driver psychologically, especially one chasing history, because Hamilton did not join Ferrari simply to fight for podiums occasionally. He joined believing an 8th world championship was possible. Now suddenly, Mercedes are locking out the front row, while Ferrari struggle to explain why their car keeps falling apart under pressure. And inside the paddock, people are beginning to notice another uncomfortable detail. Mercedes are improving aggressively. Ferrari are standing still. Mercedes arrived in Canada with major upgrades that immediately worked. Ferrari brought no new package at all after earlier development failures damaged confidence internally. That difference is enormous in Formula One. Development momentum is everything. A fast team that keeps improving becomes terrifying. A struggling team that stops evolving becomes vulnerable very quickly. And now Ferrari face another dangerous possibility. If Mercedes continue accelerating forward technically, while Ferrari hesitate development-wise, the gap may soon become impossible to recover during the season. That is why Canada felt so emotionally heavy around Hamilton, because this was not only another difficult Ferrari weekend. It may have been the weekend he realized Mercedes are becoming Formula One's dominant force again without him. And perhaps the most painful part of all is this. Hamilton finally started feeling comfortable in the Ferrari at the exact moment Ferrari themselves started looking least capable of fighting for the championship. What makes this situation even more brutal for Lewis Hamilton is that Canada may have exposed a timing disaster in his career move. Because Hamilton did not leave Mercedes while they were dominant. He left believing their dominance was over. And now, suddenly, the team he walked away from looks stronger than ever under the new regulations. That changes the emotional weight of every single Ferrari weekend moving forward. Especially because Mercedes are no longer winning through luck or chaos. They look structurally superior. The engine appears stronger. The energy deployment looks cleaner. The car balance seems more stable. And perhaps most importantly, the team itself looks united again. George Russell is driving with total confidence. Kimi Antonelli is delivering immediately despite his age. Toto Wolff looks calm and fully in control of the project. That combination is terrifying for rivals. Because dominance in Formula One rarely begins with one huge explosion. It begins quietly. One strong weekend, then another. Then suddenly everyone realizes the balance of power already shifted weeks ago. Canada felt exactly like one of those moments. And Ferrari looked completely unprepared for it. The engine deficit alone would already be alarming enough. Losing up to 25 horsepower to Mercedes at a circuit built around long straights is devastating. But Ferrari's deeper problem may actually be confusion. Because right now, the team appears unsure whether to keep developing the current car aggressively or focus resources on surviving the future regulation battles already exploding behind the scenes. That uncertainty is dangerous. Formula One punishes hesitation brutally. While Ferrari debate direction internally, Mercedes keep moving forward. And Hamilton can see it happening in real time. Imagine leaving one company believing it is slowly collapsing, only to watch it become even more successful immediately after you leave. That emotional pressure builds fast, especially in elite sport. And perhaps the clearest sign of Ferrari's instability in Canada was not the pace itself. It was the emotional contrast between the two drivers. Hamilton sounded optimistic after qualifying for the first time all season. Leclerc sounded exhausted. That split matters enormously inside Formula One teams, because garages naturally gravitate toward emotional momentum. Engineers prefer stability. Strategists trust calmness under pressure. Team principals rely heavily on drivers who sound composed during difficult periods. Right now, Hamilton surprisingly looks emotionally stronger than Ferrari's long-term star. And that creates another dangerous tension inside Maranello, because Charles Leclerc was supposed to lead Ferrari into this new era. The regulations were supposed to favor his style. The future was designed around him. Now suddenly, the 7-time world champion arriving late in his career is adapting faster mentally than Ferrari's own centerpiece driver. That can destabilize teams quickly, especially when results are already disappointing. And the fear inside Ferrari may be growing even larger because Canada exposed another painful truth. The SF26 might not simply be underdeveloped. It may fundamentally misunderstand the direction of the regulations. That possibility explains why Ferrari brought no upgrades to Montreal while rivals arrived aggressively evolving their cars. Teams usually stop introducing updates for one reason. They no longer fully trust the development path. That is catastrophic in Formula One, because once confidence disappears from the engineering department, progress slows everywhere. Risk-taking disappears. Innovation becomes cautious. Every future decision gets delayed by fear of making the problem worse. Meanwhile, Mercedes appear to be operating with complete clarity. That contrast is impossible to ignore now. One team accelerating, one team hesitating, and Hamilton sits directly between both worlds emotionally. He knows exactly how Mercedes operate during championship cycles. He recognizes the signs of momentum building, the calmness, the precision, the confidence spreading through the garage. Now he is watching those same signs reappear from the outside. That has to hurt. especially because Ferrari are not only losing on performance anymore, they are losing psychologically too. The comments from Leclerc about the brakes revealed fear. The lack of upgrades revealed uncertainty. The growing political battles over future engine regulations revealed anxiety about the future direction of the sport itself. None of those are signs of a stable championship project. And perhaps the most dangerous part for Ferrari is this. Canada may not have been their worst weekend technically. It may have been the weekend the entire paddock realized Mercedes are becoming Formula One's dominant team again, while Ferrari still cannot even decide how to stop falling apart.